These are some of the most dangerous serial killers ever. 1. Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper is probably the most infamous serial killer of all time. There are many serial killers who have a higher count of victims, but what makes him unique is the fact that very little is known about him. What made the murders so gruesome was that he mutilated the corpses in grotesque fashion. Jack the Ripper targeted female sex workers. The murder of Mary Jane Kelly was the most barbaric of all his acts. Her body was mutilated beyond recognition, and her face was hacked away. Her intestines were removed and placed beneath her head. Her breasts were cut off and her heart was also missing from the crime scene. 2. Lizzie Halliday. Lizzie Halliday, the worst woman on earth, was New York's first known female serial killer. She was also the first woman to ever be sentenced to death by the electric chair, although that sentence was never carried out. Halliday committed at least 4 murders, including 2 women she was old friends with and her 6th husband who she stabbed, shot, and mutilated. She is suspected of killing possibly 2 of her previous husbands and attempted to kill another by poisoning with arsenic. She also had a love of burning things. Apprehended and sentenced to death by electrocution, the governor of New York went on to commute her sentence and instead institutionalized her for being mentally insane. She was sent to the Mattawan State Hospital for the criminally insane, where she would live out the rest of her life. While there, she attacked and killed a nurse by stabbing her 200 times with a pair of scissors. 3. The Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer was active in Northern California during the late 1960s. He is known to have killed at least 5 people, but this number is almost certainly higher, and investigators believe the still unknown perpetrator could have had as many as 37 victims. The police were able to generate a sketch of the Zodiac Killer from eyewitnesses, but he was never caught. 4. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker, was an American serial killer and rapist. He was active between 1984 to 1985. He developed an interest in Satanism. Ramirez killed a total of 14 people and tortured dozens for a period of 14 months before being captured in 1985. In the murder of a man and his wife Maxine, Ramirez shot the husband and then brutally assaulted the wife by stabbing her to death. He then gouged out the Maxine's eyes. He never felt remorse. He was sentenced to death by gas chamber. 5. Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer, also known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, was an American serial killer active between 1978 and 1991, who was known to have raped, murdered and dismembered 17 men and boys. He is also known to have indulged in necrophilia, cannibalism and the permanent preservation of body parts. He kept the body parts of his victims as trophies. He also tried to convert his victims into zombies. He was arrested on July 22, 1991. When police found 3 heads and body parts in the fridge, he admitted to cooking and eating his victims. On the morning of November 28, 1994, Dahmer was assaulted by a fellow inmate and was beaten to death with a metal bar. 6. Ahmad Suradji. Ahmad Suradji was an Indonesian serial killer who was known as the Sorcerer. He murdered 42 people between 1986 to 1997. He claimed his late father had informed him, during a dream, that drinking the saliva of 70 dead young women would turn him into a mystic healer. Since it would take too long to find 70 women who died young, he started murdering young girls. He pretended to be a shaman and many women came to him seeking riches and beauty. After being paid, he would take them to a sugarcane field and bury them waist deep, claiming it to be part of the ritual. Then he strangled them and drank their saliva. He would then bury the decomposing body with their head facing his house, which he claimed would give him more power. He was sentenced to death and executed by firing squad on July 10, 2008. 7. Harold Frederick Shipman. Harold Frederick Shipman was a British practitioner worthy of the title Dr. Death. He was also known as the Angel of Death. He was found guilty of murdering over 218 of his patients, although the count could be as high as 250. He killed his victims by injecting lethal doses of painkillers. Shipman forged the wills of his patients so that he could inherit their money and then killed them with an overdose of morphine. He was arrested, prosecuted, and convicted. On January 13, 2004, he hung himself in his prison cell. 8. Ed Gein. Edward Theodore Gein, also known as the Butcher of Plainfield, was a murderer and body snatcher. It was also found that he had exhumed corpses from local graveyards to make artifacts from the bones and skin. When police entered his house, they found a decapitated body hanging upside down by her legs, with all her internal organs removed. There were also many human bones, bowls made of human skulls, masks made from the skin of heads, fingernails, and other disturbing remains. He was found to be mentally unstable and sent to a mental asylum, where he died of cancer on July 26, 1984.